Well, and he said he oversaw the drafting of the report, and he said that he wanted it to be, quote, the voice of the agency and to be factual both in tone and substance.
Well, I wonder if he interviewed any of the whistleblowers before he got his factual in tone and substance report.
I don't know. They'd all, at that point, they had all been quit, resigned,
I'm sure they
fired.
had phones. Could have called them. Could have called their lawyer. Asked for their side of the story. I mean, these guys. But, you know, he seems like a nice enough guy. I mean, he's, I'm not sure why he's here, I guess is it.
The only thing I can figure is just that he's there to rebut the claim from Blake Brickman that that the timing of the settlement negotiations had to do with the election. That's the only thing that makes sense right now.
Yeah, it's just all coincidental that it all happened at the same time. I'm going with that. It's working for me.
Okay.
What do you think, Bud?
Well, the interesting thing I thought was the little kerfuffle with OSO over what was admissible and which report they could use, and you know, it seemed like that the defense got slam dunked on.
And Dutko called it hearsay squared.
That's right.
Yeah, that was good. I've never heard that before, but it was a really good
The hearsay
description.
inside the hearsay inside the hearsay.
About hearsay. So.
Yeah.
You going to try using that sometime?
I actually may steal that. He was very good. He was very good. I liked his cross on these people. I don't know if he's doing it on this next one, but he's very good.
I would assume he is, because he's the one. So far, whoever's doing the objections is the one that then does the cross.
Well,
so.
I think he's excellent. I wish we'd heard a little bit more of him before today.
Well, we're seeing some really good lawyering, I think, from some of the from Aaron Epley and Mark Donnelly and Dutko, who we've not heard from before today. And I was telling someone, I feel like we've got a new legal legend in Aaron Epley, because she's pretty good.
Now, I thought Allison Collins did a good job this morning on the defense side.
She did.
She has a very nice way about her.
A good demeanor.
She has a very nice demeanor. I thought she did a good job.
But I've been waiting to see if you suddenly see Busby or Cogdill or Mitch Little come swooping in to rescue the defense lawyers who have struggled with some of these witnesses.
I think of the three, Allison Collins was probably the most effective on the defense side today.
Okay. I want to go back and talk about, because I think it was, and I think we all agree that it was pretty powerful when Dutko is questioning. Let me go back into my notes. The HR guy, De La Garza, about the firings, the Whistleblower Act. And I started to read this email from this employment law attorney while they were a minute ago, and I thought this was just fascinating what she had to say. Let me pull this email up. She said that De La Garza did not provide a complete current definition of at-will employment. That doctrine has existed since 1888 based on a Texas Supreme Court decision in East Line and Red River Railroad versus Scott. That has to do with the reasoning that when neither party has expressed a period of employment, either party may terminate at any time. And she says that when that ruling came down in 1888, there was no whistleblower or anti-discrimination laws. Currently, and this is quote, currently an employer cannot use at-will status as an absolute right to terminate, all in caps, if the termination was for an illegal reason, i.e. whistleblower retaliation. Timing is also an issue. If an employee blows the whistle and then an employer suddenly, quote, finds, end quote, reasons to terminate, such conduct starts to smell more like retaliation than a legitimate reason for termination. Using an, quote, insubordinate, end quote, tone doesn't smell very good.
I agree with that. I think that's a very good analysis. I think when you have 8 people go to the FBI and then suddenly all of them are gone within 30 days, 40 days?
Within 6 weeks, a combination.
Yeah, I think it was about a month and a half, right?
Yeah, so September 30th of 2020 is the day they go to the FBI, and that is day, let me see. I believe September 30th is the day they got wind of the second bank subpoena. I think the first bank subpoena was the 29th, but the 30th is the day they go to the FBI. October 1st, they notified HR and the Attorney General. October 2nd, Penley and Maxwell are put on A-time. October 13th, Maxwell files a formal complaint. October 14th, some of the others file formal complaints. And then 19 days after they go to the FBI, you start to see firings. And then we got people fired November 2nd. And I mean, just a combination. So pretty quickly, you got people being fired.
Well, I'll just point out that these 22 Republicans in the Senate are all conservatives who are not generally supporters of organized labor and like the idea, and themselves led arguments about Texas being an at-will state. And they're probably not in love with the whole idea of arguing based on labor law or protecting labor. So arguing the nuances of firings probably doesn't go over well with the Republican majority.
No, and I think that when you're a conservative on the right, that you are a rule follower. I mean, you believe that rules exist and the laws exist, and you're supposed to follow them. And firing people based on whistleblowing is against the law. You can't do it. I mean, you open yourself up to civil litigation, which obviously happened. I would be interested, and I don't know if anyone ever looked into this, was anyone else fired from the AG's office in those 6 weeks?
Besides the whistleblowers?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I just would be curious to know if these were the only people fired. But it was only 6 of the 8, right? Because didn't 2 resign?
Let's see.
I mean,
Right. 6 are the whistleblowers.
A couple of them resigned, and I'm
2
losing.
of them.
Mateer resigned.
Okay. They took all his duties away, right?
I don't know.
Somebody
Probably.
said they resigned.
There's people that lost. If they start to kind of run in my head,
Yes.
and I want to be careful about what I say about each one because But I know Mateer resigns, and then you have some people like Brickman.
Brickman's a whistleblower.
And he's fired, but he's basically told, you can resign or be fired, and so they fire him. That's what he testified to yesterday.
I thought Mateer, Bangert, Vassar, and Brickman were the whistleblowers.
Well, whoever were the whistleblowers that got fired, I'm just curious if anybody else was fired during that time. But, I mean, it really defies belief that educated attorneys are sitting around the AG's office thinking we can just come up with HR reasons to fire these people. Probably it's all going to be okay. And I just would love to have been a fly on the wall during those conversations of how they're going to justify firing all these people.
Well, and they wrote a memo.
Yeah, they did write a memo.
And the Third Court of Appeals didn't. The Third Court of Appeals dealt with the question of whether or not an elected official was subject to the Whistleblower Act.
Mm-hmm.
So Jay's going to bring up this, and I want Bud to kind of talk about it. He's going to bring up what it takes to convict or not to convict.
The numbers?
Yeah, and he doesn't really like the word convict, actually.
I had the numbers. Well, it's we're not convicting anybody of anything here. There's nobody on trial or facing any allegations. It votes to sustain articles of impeachment.
What are the colors?
We're discussing here.
What are those colors?
But these are basically, so you have 31 senators.
Okay.
You have the 12 Democrats that we are likely to vote in favor.
Okay.
And then what has to happen in terms of with the Republicans, one way or the other.
You have to have 9 Republicans who vote with the 12 Democrats in order to get to 21. So you see the 9 Republican blocks that are purple there. They have to vote with the Democrats in order to remove Ken Paxton as Attorney General. The presumption is, based on the pretrial motions, there were from 6 to 8 Republicans who voted to continue with the trial. So you believe going in that there are from 6 to 8 Republicans who are in those red seats, that probably more once the trial's over would be in those red seats and would be in favor of keeping Ken Paxton the number that he's looking for, it takes 21 in order to remove it. 20 to 10 vote means that the article failed, the motions fail. It takes 21 in order to remove him from office.
But you basically said, Bud, this morning that you feel like there's not the votes to sustain.
I have said all along that I did not feel like there were the votes to sustain the articles of impeachment. I felt like going in that it was within a vote either way, and that the trial might push a vote one way or the other. It would be a question of whether the prosecution brought such a strong case that a senator would feel confident going back out for re-election and saying, well, now look at this case. If there was so much attention brought to it and so much thorough feeling of wrongdoing that the voters themselves were convinced, then another senator might feel like they could go out and vote for removal. I'm not sure that's happened. I still think it's within a vote either way. I think it could be 20, it could be 21, and I think that really is still up in the air. I think that there are times at the beginning of the trial, I thought early in the trial, I thought that the prosecution was making some headway and might have gotten that 21st vote, that 10th Republican, and that 11th Republican, and then I thought, well, maybe not. That maybe they've lost some ground. So,
well,
it only takes 10 Republicans to save Ken Paxton.
Well, and keep in mind that in a criminal trial, you're not going to have people tweeting their support of the defendant to get to the jurors. You're not going to have phone numbers of jurors put out for people to call their offices and try to pressure them, and you're not going to have threats of running people against them in the primaries if they don't vote the way you want. That doesn't happen in a criminal trial, which is another reason this is such political theater.
And there is a political element to it of opponents, but I don't think most of these senators are very worried about an opponent. They have the incumbency, they have the strength of being incumbents. It would take a really well-known challenger to unseat an incumbent.
Oh, yeah, and money.
And considerable amounts of West Texas money. That money is going to be there, but the candidate may not be there. So I don't think the concern about the challenger is that strong, but it might swing a vote one way or the other. I was going to talk about the term Rhino.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
That was good.
Some of these questioners, they've started out right away and said, "Are you a Rhino?" And that's been one of the direct questions. And everybody talks now about, "Are you a Rhino?" Donald Trump's message on social media said, "Oh, these rhinos." Donald Trump has made the term Rhino mean anybody who's against me is a Rhino. It's kind of replaced the Never Trumpers.
Right.
Now the people who used to be called Never Trumpers are called Rhinos. The term Rhino first appeared in the 20s of the 20th century, in the 1920s, and the Manchester Union Leader was one of the most conservative papers in the country throughout the 20th century. Referred to some rhinos there, but then it really wasn't in common use. In the 60s and 70s, we talked about the Rockefeller Republicans in the party. They were the business Republicans. They were called the Country Club Republicans. They were the Rockefeller Republicans. And then it was not until the late 90s and the Clinton administration, after the Contract for America, after Republicans had started using the rallying cry that the pro-choice movement is baby killers, after that kind of language was used, that Republicans started attacking everyone, first of all, if they were in favor of abortion rights, something that doesn't exist in the Republican Party anymore, then they were rhinos. Or if they were in any way willing to negotiate with Democrats or work with those baby killers or even compromise with those baby killers, then they must be rhinos. It rose again in the 90s in the California Republican Party and then became applied nationwide. And so you went on, you had people like Speaker John Boehner and Mitch McConnell today, and of course Mitt Romney, the various Republicans who've been labeled as rhinos over the years because they didn't toe the line of either the the party platform that was written in the state level. The party platform is written by those few hobbyists who make their point to go to regional and state conventions, without really any input from anyone else. They go down and make things up, and then they think that everybody else should follow the things that they went off on their own and made up. The strain between elected Republicans and the delegates was so strong that last year Governor Greg Abbott didn't even speak to the state Republican convention. He held a reception of the party across the street because the state Republican the actual members of the party, the delegates, are so hostile to elected office holders that they don't even socialize with them. They don't even get involved with them anymore. But the term rhinos now, Donald Trump made it in 2016, made it into an across-the-board term for everybody who's against me. And this is part of the new loyalty oath that the Republican Party preaches, is that you're either for Trump or against Trump. You have to be for Trump all the way and do everything for Trump, whether you think it's legal or illegal, whether you think it's right or wrong. You must be for Trump. And that we see this same kind of argument in the Ken Paxton defense, that when the lawyers say that they didn't work for the state, they work for Ken Paxton. You see this kind of idea that somehow the loyalty to the office holder is more important to than the loyalty of the people. But Donald Trump's appropriation of the term rhino and making it into something, which is really ironic, because Donald Trump himself was a Democrat until 2009. He was a registered Democrat, and so he's only been a Republican
and a donor.
now. What's the math on that? 14 years.
Right.
He's been a registered Republican, but now he can determine who is a rhino, and so he's used the term rhino to mean they're against me, and he labels everybody else, all the people we used to call never Trumpers. Now you're a rhino, and now we see all of the great echo chamber on social media using the term rhino too. The social media commenters, many of whom are paid, we know, of $50 a comment. Some of them, we see all of them echoing that if you're against Ken Paxton, it's all the rhinos and the terrible rhinos who are trying to get rid of them. Rhino, rhino, rhino. And so it's become a very different term even than it was in the 90s or the 2000s.
Well, what's interesting in this case is these so-called whistleblowers, and I don't really like calling them that, but just the group, the fired ones or whatever, are some of the most conservative people you're ever going to find. So to label them rhinos is actually kind of funny, because it's ridiculous, it's absurd. These are not Republicans in name only. These are very conservative, right-wing Republican people who are the ones that are lost their jobs, went to the FBI.
It's almost like the world's a little bit upside down.
It's extremely upside down. I mean, it doesn't matter for any particular purpose, but I mean, I'm a Reagan big tent conservative. I have been for many years, ran as a GOP candidate multiple times in Dallas, and was president of my Republican Women's Club like 4 times. And I guess maybe I'm a rhino. I don't know. Maybe I am. Today I would be.
And women's clubs, and Republican women's clubs in general, are suspected of being rhinos and have been threatened with, removal from the party because they're not going along with the more manly leadership that some of the candidates want. We've had Republican candidates who said that only men should be elected and things like that. So, but the whole use of rhino has changed. Certainly, the business fiscal conservatives, are being labeled as rhinos even when they're the strongest fiscal conservatives. And then you have some of the there is a division in the faith and values conservatives. There are the strong Christian believers who believe that for all Donald Trump's or Ken Paxton's flaws, they are leading America to be more Christian and to be ruled by Christian faith and values for all their personal flaws, that they're anointed by God to make the nation and the state more Christian. Then you have another set of Christian believers who believe that the way to lead people to Christ, to win souls to Christ, is to model Christian values and Christian beliefs.
Christian witness?
And they believe it's a Christian witness, that these are not, that Ken Paxton is not a valuable Christian witness. And so Dan Patrick has written a religious book. I mean, you have many people of deep faith in the Texas Senate, and you probably have some who fall in both categories of the Christian faith movement currently, the religious conservative movement. The faith and values conservatives who are not so on board with the whole Christian domination policy believe in a more of a Christian democracy where Christians are elected, Christians win elections fairly, Christians pass bills with fair representation for everyone, and all religions are included, and America is a nation for everybody. And so you really have this division over whether Christians should boss everybody or lead everybody.
Well, interesting to look ahead to closing arguments. I'm going to be fascinated to see who argues, because there have been so many lawyers involved on both sides.
You mean who does closing arguments?
Yeah, who does the closing argument for each side? I'm sure they'll probably split it up, which is normal, which is you get allotted X amount of time and one lawyer does this portion, another lawyer does this portion. But with this many lawyers, and I think you said they were only getting an hour.
Yeah.
Is that right?
For closings, yeah.
It'll be interesting. Some of them are probably very good orators and might be more interesting to listen to. So I'm excited about closing arguments.
I'd like to hear Erin Epley.
I would like to hear. I'd like to hear it
She's
from
got
Rusty.
my vote.
It'll just be interesting.
DeGaren's really good at closing.
It'll be interesting to see who backs cleanup for both sides.
Yes.
I mean, it
yes.
feels like for the defense it will be Busby. It's hard to imagine Busby giving up the closing.
He's getting the big check.
He
Yeah.
probably wouldn't do all of it. Maybe he'll break it up. I mean,
And I think for Hardin for the prosecution in the
Yeah.
same way.
that'd be good.
Because he's there to appeal to the senators.
And you've got to go through each, and it's a lot to do in an hour, but you've got to go through each 16 of them, and you've got to say, we proved it with this and this and this testimony and this evidence, and then the other side's got to do the same thing and say, and they didn't prove it because of this and this and this, and that's how it works.
Do you have closings already written at this point?
When I try a case, I usually have a theme that I carry throughout the whole trial, so I know where I'm headed. So I know what I'm going to be doing at the end. Now, trials are easy to prepare for, but when you're trying a case, it can all fall apart. Like you can have a theme and then things happen, people say things you didn't expect, all kinds of things can happen, and you have to sort of change your theme. That's happened to me before. But generally speaking, I would say I have the basic outline of what I'm going to say at the very beginning.
So let's talk about that. So
What do you say?
theme, let's start with theme for the prosecution.
Theme for the prosecution, I think, is going to be kind of what I just described, where you're going through each one, and I would do a lot of visuals. I might even have a photograph of each witness and how they proved, what evidence they gave towards that particular article of impeachment. So, because there were a lot of people testifying, and you can tell by the way this room is laid out, in a normal trial, the jurors can see each witness because they're really close to them, but you see how far away all the seats are. If you're in the back, you maybe didn't see them very well. And so I would like to have a little photo of each witness and their name and a little summary of how I think they added evidence to prove that impeachment, and have a lot of visuals. Kind of like the timeline you said, how powerful the timelines can be. Kind of an infographic of each one of the impeachments, I would think would be a very good way to go. And then
Theme for the defense?
it really is going to depend on who is doing the closing arguments. If it's Busby, there's going to be a lot of stomping and yelling, because that's kind of his bombastic style, which has worked very successfully for him in his career. And lots of probably sarcasm and this is ridiculous and all the kinds of things we heard during his cross-examination. And then he's probably going to get up and say, in this article, they didn't even come close to we can just throw this one out. They didn't even come close, and do a lot of this dramatic stuff.
Right, because that's
I'm
kind of par for
expecting
the
that.
course.
Let's just throw this one. Let's just throw this one. Let's go to this one. They didn't throw this. Let's throw this one
He's got
out.
to do 16 of them.
Yeah, I think
Maybe he'll
it
have
has to be
16
kind of
pieces
fun.
of paper or something,
He's a very dramatic guy. I expect it to be fun.
One of the things we were talking about yesterday with Victor Vital is that, all this, rules of evidence, and because I've watched a lot of trials, but it's pretty rare to have, lawyers, subsection this of rule T, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I mean, almost like, is this going to be played in law schools, like a legal clinic?
Well, Erin should be, because I'll tell you what, she was ready. She was ready for objections more so than, just about anybody else. She was really ready.
She had her rules down.
But the guy today, what was his name?
Dutko?
Yeah, he was really good too.
I noticed
he was
somebody
making good
tweeted and
objections.
said, "I want to go out and commit crimes just so Erin can defend me."
Oh yeah, she's excellent.
Bailiff, can
Very
bring in the witness,
impressive.
please.
Oh, here we go.